basically what we talked with Chris the other day, said you guys were bringing back a counter to the DA differentiated accountability MOUs that we proposed previously as the first order of business for LCTA. And then from the LCS perspective, we want to talk about the compensation plan, compensation proposal, but it's been amended. As we discussed previously, we went back to the board through executive session, and the offer has been upgraded. And we have two different options, but of course those options are just suggestions as usual. As we talk through the money that is available, we're open to the suggestions of the union as it relates to how that money is spent. So if there are other ways that you want to slice and dice that pie, as long as it's in accordance with the law, and the primary thing that we're dealing with is that 150% rule, as you know, we're open to hearing. Right. So just a little conversation there. We do, as you know, we had our first discipline work group last week, and I think that was productive. We do not have any language to counter this week, primarily because we feel like it's still something we still need to hear more and have more discussion around it. So we'd like to schedule another work group for the discipline conversation, so that we can get a little bit closer in terms of the language piece. We would like to talk through language just a little bit around, sort of what you guys, thinking as it relates to some of the language, just so we know where there's flexibility. And, we have a couple principles here today, or past principles here today, so that we can really hear more about that argument, right, as it relates to student discipline and what can be done to counter the issues that everyday teachers are facing in the classroom. A lot of the
yeah, we're closer together.
Yeah. Sorry. A lot of the approach to discipline isn't necessarily things that would normally be memorialized in a bargaining contract. So we're trying to sort of weigh that again, weigh the power of it being memorialized in the contract versus, is that going to hamper us from an operational perspective? So we continue to be open to the conversation around student discipline. And of course, we, as many of you guys know, we are meeting tomorrow, and Chris is here, meeting tomorrow for the class size caseload work group, the first of those. And I think that's another one that's probably going to be more than just one session. So we'll plan to work through that as much as we need to, so that we can get to a place where we feel like both sides are in an acceptable position and feel like we can move forward in a positive note. All right. So that being said, that's what we've outlined for the agenda tonight. And if you guys have anything else you'd like to talk about, just let us know.
So thank you for the agenda. I think it's going to be helpful for us. The one thing I'd like to say is with the work groups and everything, I know that the concern is that work groups just kick issues down the road, and more of a date certain of when we're trying to make sure that we have language. Because what was originally shared was we'll do the work group, then we'll have language proposals at the next session. And so if that's not what the intent is now, based off of needing more information, what we're going to need to know is what more information do we need, because I think there was some really good information that was shared. So what are the gaps? And then rather than doing work groups that are so spread out at 1 hour a time, she's in opposition to work groups, but maybe get together and carve out 2 days back to back, 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and just knock out this, so we don't have to worry about 3 months later still worrying about what the work groups look like. We could put the language up on the board, we could go through the entire process and be able to come back and have that conversation.
But yeah, I think that if it is fully our intention, I mean, if we So we met as a group after the work group, and then there was still a lot of, with principals. Our principals are the ones that are at the tip of the sword. They're the ones that are in the schools, and there was a lot of concern around some of the language that was proposed. And so what we're trying to do is get to a point where we're not just saying, no, this language isn't good, current contract language. We're trying to get to a point where we are working through on our side proposed language that works, and we just don't feel like we're there. We're not ready to do that yet. We're not at a place yet where we feel like we understand the issue to the depth that is needed to understand in order to propose counter language that is going to work for both us and for you guys, right?
And just for context, I think Parkland is a good example. We were talking out beforehand about how the defense is talking about how this has been known for so long, and that it fell through the cracks. There wasn't paperwork, there wasn't documentation. There are things that needed to be done, and that's a part of what we're trying to create, is some consistency so that those types of things don't happen, because every site is doing their own thing. And so just to give some context of like the highest level in terms of liability to the district and to.
Well, and also there were things brought up in the work group, and I know I wasn't there, but we did discuss it afterwards, that might not necessarily change contract language, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't take action on it as a district. And so I think that's part of what Brett was articulating, is that there may be things like, for instance, that Pasco, the changes that they made to discipline, it wasn't necessarily in their labor contract, but they were changes that they made to their policies to address some of the problems that they're having. So the contract language isn't the only outcome of some of those sessions and some of those things. And so we're trying to divvy up. There was a lot of valuable things that were brought up, and we talked about, we need to address them, not in language. And I don't think you proposed language like about some of the ASD, issues and things like that. But there were things that we talked about, some ideas that were had that could help address those. So again, some of that is going to be in contract language, but a lot of it is going to be in other action.
Some of it is just things that we as a district need to tackle.
Right.
To tack on, focus and come up with a solution to. And we wouldn't be prepared to enter into contract language until we're able to do that, right? And so, we want to just emphasize that I think that the work groups are really emphasizing the issue. We want to understand the issue very well. We do very much respect what teachers are going through on a day-to-day basis. If there was a magic silver bullet to fix it right away, we would have fixed it, right? So it's going to take a little bit more time and effort. And we don't want to just kick this can down the road. It's not about kicking the can down the road. It's about understanding the issues and being able to develop language that really does attempt to solve our problems without creating unintended consequences, without really stripping the authority of the board. So there's a lot of things there that we have to be aware of, right? And so what we're saying is we want to hear a little bit more, talk a little bit more, be a little more thoughtful around how we do this. We probably need to schedule. Right now, we're trying to get an agreement on compensation so that we can get teachers paid, right? And so I think that's a focus, right? But I think that our goal would be to continue to have, once we've had these work groups, continue to have language conversations where we're actually working on language, right? But I don't think we're there yet, is all I'm saying. We're not at a point where I can get a consensus. In the room the other day with our group, we had three principals, three current principals. We had additional past administrators in the room. We had district administrators, and we couldn't get a consensus on any of it, right? Even amongst us, right? And so that's what our issue is in terms of trying to understand and formulate a plan that's going to be effective for everyone.
But I think you have a valid point of sometimes work groups can end up as a place where we talk, and then nothing happens, and then we get together and we talk and nothing happens, and we keep talking. And so I think that something that we could do from that is documenting the issues that are brought up, that we determine are actual issues and not just conversation, right? And keeping track of what the status of those is. So even if it's not contract language, there should be some follow-up or consensus that follow-up isn't needed or something of that nature. So I think that, having like a spreadsheet of the action items that come out of that or the issues that come out of that, that we can jointly have as an output of that meeting might help both sides not let things fall and make sure that actions are taken. And that would be something we could easily do.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because then we could just put the shared document in a OneDrive and
Right.
make sure that we're keeping. They can use OneDrive. Or Microsoft. Right?
Yes, OneDrive
They
is
can't
what we
use Google
use.
Drive.
Don't even say that. It rhymes with
Two
We
cents.
use
We don't have to talk about that.
Until we get to item number 7. So as far as the MOUs and everything, I will fall on this one because we ended up printing it out and you gave me the 2 copies and everything. Those 2 copies are not here right now, but I have the electronic version, so I can send it to you real quick. It is very minimal in terms of the change. The only thing is that where it says the 20 hours for the school, the 20 hours portion was just not when funding's available. It's just we're going to just pay the PD at the $20 per hour based off of the information that we talked about, and just make sure we codify it into the MOU. And then as far as the other one, just making sure that it was hourly. The issue of teacher versus instructional staff is the other part. And the reason why it's been brought up is this. For example, if you're at an L300 or a DA school, there's sometimes where teachers don't, or should I say speech language pathologists or other folks that are not necessarily traditional classroom teachers, that this is a team, we're working on this together, but then they're not included, which means they're not a part of that. So we just, in our issue, we wanted to make sure that everyone was at least captured. And whether or not you feel that the other section that's below does it, it was just our suggestions and we're open to any comment.
Do you have, let me just ask the question.
Sure.
Has that distinction caused an issue in the past?
Yes.
It has.
Yes.
So in terms of us not paying the differentiated accountability to people that are not classroom teachers.
Right.
Okay.
And so you get like 4 or 5 people on site that don't feel like they're a part of the group. That's trying to work. If you want to speak to it, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I think just with that language, whenever there is something that goes through, it just can cause a lot of confusion. And we always are having to clarify who does that include, because some people aren't teachers. So that's kind of why we're taking the angle of changing that language. If the intent is to include everybody, then changing that language would really help to just clarify in those instances to include everybody.
So
I just wanted to give it to you. I'm not
there
sure.
is in section 1B instructional staff, and then we qualify or define that term, including that term.
Correct, but I just, you know how it is. Sometimes it says one thing in one article, then it says another thing in other, and people don't read all the way through to the other piece. And so just to minimize interpretation, which does happen at the site level, we just want to be as clear as possible. So,
But essentially, would the definition of instructional staff be hourly and part-time staff who have assigned courses and issue grades? Or it extends beyond that?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
There's-
we
there's
don't
a
issue
distinction
grades.
between- Right, yeah.
So then we should probably just. that
We
whole
can talk
section.
through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Get us a
these are the
chance to talk
suggestions.
about
and
it.
we give you
Yeah.
a rationale.
Okay.
And for everybody that doesn't know, we're talking about our L300 and differentiated accountability schools, which are the ones that have fallen into the state's monitoring. For what? No L300.
Pre-K
differentiated.
teachers are excluded.
Didn't you see
Right,
what-
right.
So used to dealing with it.
I know. Made it that quick.
Right.
Okay, all right.
So
I
I've
was
sent
just
the
seeing
electronic
to get
copy.
what
yes,
his
you
color
can
Okay.
suggested.
delete the change.
We can
Change more than that.
Yeah. Because it's sometimes just looking at other
Right.
things
Where did
that-
you-
Exactly.
So it was a
Yeah.
good catch on
Yeah.
for y'all.
Cross.
That's all I wanted.
20 hour. Is that 20 hour?
See, that was good faith.
There is, so Riley was the one that was, I only did one.
Okay.
They're all the same.
Right, right.
So-
Yeah, yeah.
So when it comes down to.
I'm just looking for the language that you're crossing. and
Here
the
you go.
language that you're putting in.
Because theirs was slightly different.
Okay, there it is. Okay. Yeah. All right, so we'll look at that as well.
Right, so it's right.
And then this was the piece I was like,
All we did was copy and paste contract language except for the part that says when funding is available.
gotcha. I just wanted to see that that was.
Okay.
what
We
you.
can look at it.
We'll definitely look at it and circle back whenever after we call.
Okay. So Chris?
Are there any other issues on so for the schools that are not Riley, right? There's 4 other schools. So the language just changes to instructional staff and it doesn't include, there's. no other
It copies
changes.
and mirrors based on whether it was a PD group or whether it was an hourly group. It's just change the name of the school.
I think the main reason today was that you guys are prepared with an augmented
We do.
financial. offer, is that right?
We do. So we've gone back to the board and we're prepared to offer a couple different options. Both of the options are around the same price, carry about the same price tag, if you will. They're not exactly the same because of there's minor differences in the calculation methods and whatnot, but they're within the same neighborhood. This is an increase from our original offer was 6.1 million. This offer has increased by about 500,000, 532,000. So we're at. Can you hear me? So the revised offer has been increased. We have 2 additional sort of options, if you will, but we've discussed, these are really just options. What is sort of firm is the total price tag, and it's just a matter of how we apply the discretionary amounts, right? So there's an amount that is set by state statute. That's the teacher salary increase allocation. And, that allocation is very much set in stone in terms of the way that we apply it. And then there is the amount that comes from the general fund. That's the contribution from the district. And that rule is really governed by 150% rule until we get to 47.5. Okay, so the way that works is for every dollar that we give to a grandfathered teacher, we've got to raise the base by $1.50. So it's really a limiting factor in how we approach this. So I've got Casey Bickley who's going to discuss option 1, and then we'll follow it up with Wallace Knight, who's going to discuss option 2. And you guys can feel free to, like I said, adjust these as you wish within the confines of the law.
Is there
Gonna
something to
pass
pass
them
for
out?
that? I was like, I'll write it all down. if I have
And we
to.
will pass.
Can you hand me a copy?
You want to share?
Because I have my copy
Sure.
that I wrote all over, but you just kind of. Oh, you want your steps? That's who's the good one. Do you guys have them?
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great that they have it. However, if you want to discuss it.
Oh.
Cheers.
You had one job today. That was it.
But I went to the south, I went the other way.
Are you ready?
Yep.
You guys have enough copies around?
All right, Casey,
Good.
remember to use your teacher voice.
Okay.
I'm not a low talker.
You've developed Leonard's voice.
Well,
It's like from Seinfeld, wasn't there like a
The
low
low talker?
talker?
There's a low talker.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep things calm.
Come on, use your
For my
toes.
elder millennials and Gen Z in the room. Okay, so option one, is this, everyone can hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so option one increases the base salary by $3,362 to $47,040. So closer to 47.5, not quite there yet. And you can see the breakdown from TISA and then the contribution from the general fund. So then we have for teachers above the base, which we've termed tab. There's a $2,074 increase. And then you can also see the breakdown from that. And then this option also raises the supplement base by 10%, which the supplement base is intended to be the same as the base, but it's significantly lower. So this would raise it to 33.5 for an estimated total cost of 6.6 million. So this option definitely maximizes the increase for experienced teachers. So then we have Mr. Knight.
Option two. With option two, we will increase the base by $3,822, and we get to the magic number of 47.5 for the base salary for teachers. Okay. Now the same cost of that $6.6 million. The difference, however, teachers that are above the base will get an increase of $1,800. Using this model, the assumption next year, we will be able to go from the 150% rule to the 75% rule.
It's definitely not what we feel like is the fairest of options, the option two, because it really isn't maximizing the amount that we can give to those teachers that are above the base. And so that's why I think that from Superintendent Hannah's perspective, he really prefers option one because it maximizes what we're giving to the teachers above the base this year, though it does take a little bit longer to get there. Now, it's also important to know that we had 6,900 different supplements in our county last year, right? So there's a lot of people that are spending a lot of time outside of normal classroom hours, supporting clubs, activities that are being department heads and things along those lines that would benefit from the increase, the 10% increase in the supplement base. But once again, this is what we're putting on the table, and we're open to counter strategies.
Sure. I'm sure we'll need to caucus, but one question I have is, so you put in here to raise the supplement base, but in the contract, it says when funds are available to increase the ESE service provider supplement. So I'm kind of curious how you've come to put this in here, but not that. By putting this in here, you're saying funds are available for supplements, but not the funds that the contract says you need to pay when it becomes available. I guess that's why because we've been talking about that for this whole bargaining session, and now you're coming back with different supplement increases.
I think that funds are in this situation negotiable, right? And so when we talk about what the value is, I mean, if you guys would like to counter with a proposal that sets aside
It's $200,000 contributed toward the supplement base.
Yeah,
And
but
my
the-
understanding is that would not be enough to,
the ESE professional number is $258,000 per iteration. So
That is an incorrect costing. So what you guys provided, this kind of drove me nuts, because at the table for the teacher raises, it's been, the 6.1 million, whatever. That's the amount for the raises, not the full compensation. For the ESE service providers, what you all provided as costing is the full compensation, including what you're already paying, not the iteration. Also, I don't know how you're breaking down the 1/3, 2/3. What your breakdown is doing is just doubling it and then adding another 50%. I mean, that's just what the sheet you gave me was. It was $500,000. But the actual increase of 1/3 of the current supplement times 70 something people is like $115,000.
okay, I think that we just need to have a sit down and go over the numbers, because that's not what the costing reflected. So I mean, the costing reflected the new money, what it would cost to do for all of the current ESE professionals. It's not like what we have set aside, what we're paying in the current salary, plus it's all new money. So we just need to nail that down. And
because the sheet you gave me had that, and then I adjusted my own sheet to do that, and then it matched your numbers.
did you see the sheet that I sent you most recently?
I think so, yeah. It's the
I
only
sent
one
I sent one in the last week.
I'll have to look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, what was
So-
the first one that you sent?
I sent one, the first one would have been like months ago.
No, yeah, I looked at that one.
Okay.
Yeah,
But then
with the
there was
newest
one.
numbers, right? With the newest numbers of providers. And yeah, it seemed to me that you all were taking whatever you're paying them now and saying, well, next year we have to pay that
So-
double and then triple
Well,
next
and
year.
well, I mean, the
and
bottom
cost of
line
the
is,
people.
if it's less, great. And if y'all want to, and if you guys want us to take money out of the total amount that we're getting to fund that, then we'll do that, right? But it's got to be part of the $6.6 million total. And then when, we look at how many, what's the greater good? That we just talked about, there's 6,900 different supplements. There were 2,292 unique teachers that are touched by the supplement base. So if you want to do both, we could do both. It's just the impact is we don't get as close to 47.5 this year
Yeah,
than as we thought we would.
it seems though that whatever was agreed to previously was totally, I don't know, never gonna happen, because for 15 years, it's been when the funds were available. It's not eye roll inducing, it's reality. When the funds were available, rewind the footage. When the funds were available, all right, it was that this implementation would happen. Funds are available, and you're saying, well, but it doesn't affect enough people. And so it's like, if that's the argument, okay, it would have never affected enough people for LCS to implement it, is what I'm saying. If you disagree with that, Exhibit A is this, that,
So I
you know.
think that we're like starting in a vein of contention unnecessarily. So if you think it costs less than $200,000, I think that we would say, and that's your priority, then we're fine with that as well.
Yeah, let's do
I
it.
think we just need to talk about whether it seems like there's a mathematical difference where
Sure.
our understanding was it was not, the 200,000 wasn't enough to cover the ESE. Not that we didn't think the ESE was important, but that it wasn't enough
Yeah.
to
so
cover
had
that.
your costing worked out to 150K, that would have appeared here, presumably. Because the contract says when the money's available, it would be put there.
I think,
The money is subject to these negotiations.
correct.
And so what
Right.
we're saying
Oh, I
is,
agree with that.
is if you
Right.
want to, if you as a union want us to dedicate that money to go to the ESE professionals, we're open to that.
Right.
100%. So this is what, so when Superintendent Hannah says, this is how I envision this money being spent. This is his preference, because it
Sure.
prioritizes those individuals who have experience as teachers, and it also impacts a ton of individuals. 2,292 individual teachers last year's had supplements. So it
Right.
impacts a very broad number of teachers. That's the justification behind it.
It's bizarre.
If you want to do both, do both.
It's just bizarre. It
it's-
didn't come up until now, after talking about these supplements for the whole time. And so it's kind of strange to just minutes to midnight here, this general supplement increase, but
Well, I think what we were saying is, I mean, we could even take that $200,000 and apply it into the base and
Absolutely.
the above the base increases, which would increase both by $100. So we've done that math as well, if you are not interested in that at all. So I think it was
Sure.
just a small amount of money that we were able to utilize, since the base for that supplement is so far beneath the base, and there are team leads and, there are a wide variety of uses for that supplement. And so we felt that that would be something that would be beneficial, but you obviously represent the teachers. And if you don't feel that that's beneficial, we're listening to what you think is the most beneficial.
I don't think that it's not beneficial. I think
Or that
we
you have
all,
different
we all
priorities.
understand that it's beneficial.
Right.
The issue that really comes up is you're saying that it costs 200,000. You're only 58,000 away from implementing the supplement increase for something that's been 15 years. And
Your own
it's,
version.
yes, and it's like, we don't have 58,000, but then when the school board is in a meeting, they go ahead and allocate money to schools like that when there's a
Mhm.
need. So the money is available and this is a need. So we're just trying to figure out how 58,000 might be like a stopping point to go ahead and do it.
It really isn't a stopping point. What it is that this is a proposal, and we're putting it out there to you guys. If you guys, so if we carve off the $200,000, then we can only get the 47,040. If we carve off another 258,000 to
Hold on,
do
Brett, I
the
think the ESC supplement, it wasn't just the 258, just the $58,000 difference, right? Wasn't there
it's an
additional?
additional 258,000.
Right,
If
so,
we carve off an additional
So you're saying
258,000.
Because I asked that-
450,000.
yes,
If we
yes.
carve off 458,000 to do both of those, then we just don't get as close to 47.5 as we were before. And our goal in this
I just
whole,
wanted to make sure that we weren't quibbling
right.
over 58,000.
Well,
We're not
that's
quibbling.
because it made it
Yeah.
sound like it was.
I asked the same
That's-
question
Thank
when we
you.
were, yeah.
I misspoke. So the point is that, we're trying to get as close as we can to 47.5 or get to 47.5, right, this year. But it's, like we said, the whole impetus is we want to make sure that we're giving as much as we can to those individuals that have been here the longest, right? The experienced teachers, we don't feel like it's necessarily right to leave them out in the cold. That's why we prefer the option that doesn't get us to 47.5 this year, because it allows us to give more to those teachers who have been here, right? But if, I understand that there is definitely advantages to us going ahead and getting to 47.5 this year. And so what we're trying to do is really just put it back and say, I understand. So I'm sorry when I sort of did, but 15 years ago, I don't know what happened at the table. I don't know why they didn't go ahead and implement it. I think that it had something to do with the economy at the time, right? So it's just never been revisited, right? So this year we're revisiting this issue. And if that's where you want to put that money, we're fine with that, 100%. But it's just a matter of, there's only so much money.
Right. I think just to pull the Band-Aid, the concern at this point is that the supplement base increase came about with a meeting with coaches that didn't go so well. And that is the preimpetus to add for an increase to the base. So the question then becomes, is it really about reaching everybody, or is it about reactionary stuff when we're in the middle of the bargain? And so we can have that conversation, but I think that when it comes down to it, the goals are not the goals because of limitations. Would we love to do everything and put it back to the base of what the salary is? Yes. Would we love to do all the things like the Title I supplement, move it from $100 per semester? Yes, we would love to do all those things. But I think when it's kind of gauged in a way where it says, this hits more people, or we care about veteran teachers, so we want to make sure that we were the people that have been loyal top. We do too, which is why we gave the recertification supplement piece, salary supplement. We gave other things to address all those issues. I just want to make sure that when we kind of work together, it's not ownership of an idea and whatever comes out of it, that then it becomes, like we had mentioned a little bit before, reactionary stuff to whatever the decisions are. It doesn't mean they go off the plate. It means that they are on the plate because there's always going to be the next session, there's always going to be the next thing. So
Well,
I think that where we're at is, Rocky's heard this message on numerous occasions. So yes, there have been meetings, recent meetings where people have expressed this, but it's a consistent theme that's come out, which is why, you know, it wasn't triggered by one meeting with one set of coaches. It was triggered by hearing this from multiple groups over the course of many years. Because from his perspective, he's tried to raise this supplement base on numerous occasions and really hasn't gotten anywhere with it. But once again, I mean, like, we want to be 100% positive here. If we want to change the way that money is spent, that money is flexible. Yeah, we got you.
I see you.
We can get to, we can take that extra 200,000 and we can put it right back into the top, or we can take an additional 258,000 and do the ESC professionals, or we can add it to both, but it all has an impact on that top number, which right now is 47,040. So if we add more to it, that number will, I don't know, go down, obviously, maybe, I don't know exactly what haven't costed out the 258,000 on top of the 200,000, but it'll go down, and we won't be as close to 47.5. And so I don't even, so it really goes back to what your preference is.
I just had a point of clarification, just a question. The people that are at 4,700, like just flat, let's say that there's a group of those people in the salary scale right now, they're getting more than just a $40 raise or a $500 raise, or are they just getting, and is it the 3,362, even if they're, like, I was wondering what the difference would be, like, if they make it to 4,740, and that's only $40 for them because they're already at 4,700 or 47,000, what is
They would
their
get-
increase?
So it's like a sliding scale. So
Okay.
they get to the minimum, and then
Okay.
they get an additional amount that is the amount that the other.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
So like if
clarify.
it was they're $40
Yeah.
away, they would get $1,840. Because
Okay.
$40 gets them to the 47.5, and then the $1,800.
The $1,800 on top of that,
So
okay.
no less than 2,000.
No. Well, in this situation,
In
yes.
this-
In this
In the
situation.
top
the option
situation,
one.
in the option one, okay, so that's what that, okay, so no less than 1,800 for anybody on the
Right.
secondaries.
Yes.
And I did want to say that, we were aware that there were some concerns about coaches. And so we did go back, Brett went back, and the numbers that he gave, we did do due diligence to make sure that, is this only coaches that would be impacted? And it was not. There were almost
292 teachers.
2,292 teachers.
2,290.
Yes.
Is that?
That's more. than
Takes
teachers.
it takes into- it- Let me
Instead of
explain.
6,900.
Well, there is turnover
so
included in that.
There's turnover
so-
included. So there were people that were in it, and then, if you factor in the terminations, and so there was a teacher that was a department head, and that person then quit, retired, did whatever, and then you hired another person that's the department head, and so it counts as twice. And so, as you look at it, there are, the numbers, they're not one-to-one,
Yeah.
but, on the whole,
2,292 unique payees received supplements.
How many are not? in the party?
they're all in the unit.
Well, he said
Those
it's
are all teachers.
6,900
Yeah, but we
supplements
broke it.
total,
Is not in the party
2,200.
that's
Oh, I-
receiving
92
this
are
So,
teachers.
so I don't know that number, because what we pulled was just those that are teacher pay types. So like we excluded all of the non-teacher pay types from this. So this is just basic numbers. So there could have been 10,000 total supplements given last year. And of those 10,000, 6,909 were teachers, right? But it's a pretty significant number that are in the unit as it stands.
Well, if you're seeing that there are 6,900 supplements, but only 2,292 are teachers, that's less than 50% of the supplements going to instructional staff that we have.
No, it means that what I saw when I looked at the numbers, that was like, you had a ton of teachers that were getting more than one.
Yeah,
They were getting 2 or 3 supplements, for the year.
Yeah, so the 2,291 really is not that.
No,
It's less than
no,
that.
those are only. teachers.
2,292 unique teachers that are getting, maybe getting 1, 2, 3, or 4 supplements.
There's like one teacher at each school not getting a supplement.
There's a lot of dang people getting supplements, that's all I'm gonna say.
I want to circle back to just clarify, since we're going to keep arguing together about
so
this language.
It's more than coaches is what
Yeah.
we're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
It's
it's
a
the
lot
whole
more than
supplement
coaches.
scale.
So.
So I also want to make this very clear. This is the very first time
That's different language.
that this is being brought to us. correct?
Since I've been here,
Okay.
yes.
That,
I don't know. So according to the superintendent, he indicated that there's been discussion about raising the supplement base in the past that was not, adopted or supported by LCT.
okay, but that's not this bargaining session.
Not this part of the session. No, you're correct.
It was adopted and it was supported because it was part of the 2017 agreement. So it's,
That's, I mean, obviously, it's been supported at some point or another because it would still be stuck at $1,500, right? But, the last couple of times that, as it was put to me, the last couple of times it's been brought forward, it's not been something that was super supported.
so let's talk about supplement selection process, which every year is supposed to be open to everybody and staff. And by October 15th, you're supposed to have a list of all the supplements at the school site with the money amounts that people are making listed on the LCT bulletin board, shared out with everybody. Does that happen at your school site where you are opened up to all supplements? Okay, so
I'm saying yes,
I guess
I'm saying that.
some,
There's-
so my
So, I mean-
point is, it's a consistency issue that we brought forward before with the language and implementation. So for anything to be entertained with this, we have to address that part.
Absolutely, and that's already language. So, I mean, we support that 100%. And in fact, I mean, the spirit of that language was truly enforced when we required all of our coaching positions to be advertised on our ATS system so that it was 100% above board.
What
So we
ATS
have
is
a problem
open
with that. So
to, ATS is open to all, not just to the staff at that school.
I understand, but it is clearly articulating that the job is available to everyone in the community. So including.
But it's not, it's first available to the instructional staff at that school site by contract.
But
So
it doesn't have to, so I understand that.
procedurally, it does go through that process. It goes to school first, then it goes to district second, then it goes to outside sources.
Sure, but we can break it down and look at the individuals from the school first, and then look at the folks from outside in a subsequent order and still advertise it at the same time.
I have a concern. ESC has been asking, presenting, explaining in great detail. And then you guys have a meeting with coaches and we get something, whatever the perspective. The
So
perspective is a little
I
interesting.
don't
to
think
me.
so. So what we're saying to you is not that the ESC professionals are not on the table. They are on the table. They're 100% on the table. And if that's what you guys want to put forward and support, then 100%, that's what we want to do. So,
There's been a
as it
change in-
relates.
There's been a change in.
So I think maybe to go off that is, to try to close this all up, the language says when funding becomes available and you're like, okay, it's negotiable, right? But I read that and said, I mean, we agreed in the beginning months ago, there was quite a bit of funding available, right? So I said, oh, we better put it in there. It's been 15 friggin' years, right? So we put it in there. But Rocky's understanding of that language was, that doesn't apply to me, I guess. Even when, if this year wasn't going to be enough funding, nothing was going to bring that to the forefront. And I'm asking because it's like, I don't think I would have bargained that language anyways, but I definitely would now because it holds no weight at all to LCS. We proposed it, you didn't propose it. I did partially based on the language. I felt like there was an obligation there. So, right, so that language LCS uses non-obligatory in any way to them to ever approach it again.
Well,
I
Is
think,
what I,
I think that there have been conversations and ways that we've applied, like with insurance benefits, that there were concerns about the fact that it wasn't bargained. So if we
Right.
took our money and applied it without bargaining it, there would be a
I'm
concern.
talking about a
So
proposal, sorry. So we brought a proposal to the table because the CBA says when funding's available, it should be implemented. So we said, well, we all agreed there was a bit of funding and you're saying it's negotiable, but if you didn't read that language and interpret it as we should probably propose something because we said we would 15 years ago, that sets off alarm bells in my head to not agree to any similar language later, because I'm saying, is there even a dollar amount that LCS would have proposed that language? If you had $30 million?
So
But-
I
but
get
that-
where you're,
You know
so
what I'm
the
saying?
bottom line
I
is,
do,
we're
but-
not going to unilaterally impose. We're at the negotiation table with you guys. And if that's what you want us to use the money for, then that's what we'll do. But we're not going to unilaterally say, we're setting this money aside for the ESE professionals, because to Casey's point, when we did that before, we got our hands up.
Or
I'm
if we,
talking about
even if we
proposal.
proposed it,
Yes.
it would be money taken out of, it would be removing flexibility from the overall proposal. So our understanding was allow you to prioritize how the money was spent instead of us just making that assumption. So what we're saying is that 200,000, we absolutely could utilize it in that way. We could also make adjustments to the increases to accommodate that. But again, we're looking at you guys to provide us that.
Sure.
We're
So-
not trying to, I think that language is difficult. And I agree with you. I wouldn't have agreed to that language from our side because it really doesn't have any teeth to it. And it kind of ties both of our hands in a way, because it's saying that we have to spend money, even if you guys don't agree that that's the way to spend it. Sort of, you could interpret it
Yeah,
that way.
part
I
of the
think
question
we're,
is implementing, should it mean you should have already done it? Or does it mean bring it to the table? I'm saying at the very minimum, to have not proposed it with a language in there, all I'm pointing out is that that means no language like that is ever meaningful, really, because if it wasn't now, it wasn't ever.
I think that we have to bring it to the table. We have to bring it to the
Right.
table.
I
Casey
don't
answered the
disagree.
question.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think none of us were around when that
Right.
was agreed to, and it's like we'll really give it a try. And
But we really don't, we don't really want to, I think it's counterproductive to continue to argue about intent. What we're trying to do is give as much as we can to the teachers and to do it in a manner that is consistent with your wishes. And so let's throw that out the window. And if that's what you want to do, then we'll do.
I'm
But
considering
what-
intent going forward is what my questions were. So again, I don't know that I would propose anything like this. Sounds like you wouldn't have either, but okay.
I think
It's not
the
good
main
feedback.
concern is that in proposing it this way, it seems reactionary, and I know that Rocky believes that it's something that needs to be done, but it seems like it was to a group of people very recently where other groups are saying stuff, and they would like the same reaction.
so,
And not some of the responses we've heard in previous meetings.
I think part of it is we can't speak for anyone else's intention, but when we had discussions about it with our team here, it was not focused on coaches. It was not related to a meeting at all. So I understand that's the perception, and I'm not saying that it didn't impact others, but it was not told we need to do something because we had a meeting and coaches aren't happy. So I can 100% say that I personally, and I don't think anyone at this table, when we've
No.
had discussions, we're making options to appease that small group of people. Now, we knew that there were some concerns about it, and that's why we made sure that we reviewed and said, is this the case? And we looked and we felt that it was it would impact more people. And so I don't think that we can, I certainly hope that other groups don't feel unimportant and like one group was important, because I know for a fact that was not the intention. And I can definitely say that none of us were being influenced of like coaches are more important than ESC teachers, or we know that there's needs in every group.
Right, but presenting it at this point in the process after 6 other sessions makes it now, if you don't go with it, then now it becomes an issue for
Right.
other groups. And I just want to make sure that like, it would be helpful to have those priorities at the beginning of
I
the
agree.
situation rather than
We ended up with
2
this
months. in
a
advance
small
into
odd
the
amount
process.
of money that we
Right.
didn't think could really fit in from our calculations into the ESC. And so we identified a different use for it.
And had
But
it been costed like I did, you would have put it towards the ESC service provider.
it would have, there would have definitely been a lot more discussion. I know we were talking about ESC
And at the
and if we
bottom-
could apply it. So I know personally we had that discussion.
And to be clear, we're open to changing the way.
Yeah,
that
I've,
this is
I've
Right,
I've
right.
totally heard that.
Right.
Sarah is gonna say some stuff now.
Yeah, I gotta try to remember everything, but, so just obviously to the ESC supplement, for people who, I want to clarify for people in the room and people listening, just what that's targeting. That is referring specifically to OT, PT, SLP, and school psychologists, when we're talking about this supplement that the language was created 15 years ago. So just to clarify for people who may not know, I hear everything you guys are saying, that the money's flexible, and I don't want to hammer that, right? We can negotiate and get creative. But just some things to keep in mind, like some things that said that stuck out to me was saying, even just recently, that we at the table were not here 15 years ago when that language was created, but that language was created. And I know there are people in the room who were here 15 years ago when that was created. So you guys might not have been there. We might not have been at the table in this arrangement, but there are people in the room who were there for that language. And to see it neglected and not done and not followed through on year after year after year after year after year after year, that's an issue. And that's what we're seeing. We don't understand why that language says, like to Chris's point, if the funds are available, these supplements will be implemented. So from our perspective, it just again feels like, well, why is this not happening? Because clearly there already is contract language that speaks to it. So why isn't that being honored?
I think that, and we should
Right.
probably caucus about
Right.
now, but I would also say that, we couldn't speak to the intention of the language because we weren't there, not that how it's applied, but I think that we shared that our perception is that we would work collaboratively. Now, if the desire is that we would take funds and not discuss them and apply them to a supplement, I think that would be a different direction that we could go towards.
We're not talking about that.
So, but I think that goes to, it's not
Well-
just our unilateral decision to not apply funds to that, right? So and I'm not saying that there's anyone's fault, it's just every year we have a limited amount of money and it gets allocated in ways that are decided jointly. And so we're trying to bargain that fund instead of just applying it without input.
Right. Just to go to your point, Sarah, I was here as well. And I understand at that point when we went into that agreement and that language, the following year, there was an economic collapse. And the priorities of the union and the district shifted during that time. So the perspective here is very, very important that everyone knows the context of the situations that happen. So we all understand. I think the intent right now is to present something, put it on the table, you all review it, come back to us, and then we can all discuss it and move forward. Because we can go back to the 5-8 years during that time where there was an economic collapse and it shifted everything. For those of us that were here, we understand that's exactly what occurred. So let's just keep our eyes moving forward, and I know we can do it. We can do it. All
I
right.
guess I would just, as a veteran who's been at the bargaining table for a long time, what we bargain today, 15 years from now, will still be just as important.
Right.
And so we have to be very, very careful, because
Right.
I have been at this table for a very long time. And lots of agreements are made.
Right.
And that's why we put them in the contract. Right? And that's why we hold each other accountable. And that's why we come to the table and edit the language when it becomes appropriate to meet the changes of the time. But when we make an agreement, we have to do everything in our power to do that.
Well, one thing is you go back to the economic collapse. I mean, if you remember back, there were many years where no increases were given at all, right?
I do.
So then for the subsequent years, they're trying to divert all funds to make up for that. And so that's why at that point in time, they're trying to make up for the fact that there were people that didn't get increases. So that particular supplement wasn't the priority. It was at that point, the greater good, which is, ultimately why we're back here at the table now, negotiating these aspects.
But the priorities also change based on who's superintendent, who's sitting at the board,
That's true.
and who's
Correct.
sitting in your seat.
And who's sitting on your side too, right? I mean, priorities change
It's
every year,
collective bargaining.
right?
Thank you.
Should we caucus now?
Caucus?
Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
let's take a caucus.
There are more people in the room. Okay, yeah, you don't want
Yeah,
to. Feel free to.
I'm not normally a quiet person, but I don't want to put off that I'm yelling at people either. So anyway, we're good. You got it. All right, so we are prepared to respond to the MOU and Wallace Knight.
Okay, so I am looking at the MOU with Appalachia Elementary School on it. For the most part, your first strike through under 1B, where instructional staff is defined. So what we did was strike through instructional staff and keep teachers there, because we're defining a term with a term. So just with consistency, but in all other places where you strike through teachers with instructional staff, we're accepting that. Also accepting the provisions under 3A, where compensation at the rate of $20 per hour and in-service credit shall be awarded. We are accepting that language as well.
Add a period there.
All right. So we are there with that one. Do you all want to
Riley is the only one that
comment? And with Raleigh, again, the places where we define instructional staff under 1A, we're striking through your counter with instructional staff and keeping teachers there. All places where you strike through teachers and change to instructional staff, we are accepting that revision. And under provision 10, where for clarification purposes, where you put will be compensated at their hourly rate, that is understood. So that's just clarification of the language. All right.
Thank you. We will accept the documents tomorrow. We can figure out, we're finalizing some things, to make sure that they're out there.
absolutely.
And Chris, we went through the spreadsheet. And after a lot of back and forth, I think that if we go through it together and explain it, that it is correct. It's just some of the numbers, how you interpret them is a little confusing. It could have been a clear spreadsheet. So from our perspective, we do think that it's correct, but I think if we go through it with you,
Yeah, did you have different interpretations amongst yourselves?
Well, there are 3 sheets, one for year 1, one for year 2, one for year 3. There were a few things where it looked as if it was being added together, but really it was inclusive of another term. So again, it's kind of understanding how the data was interpreted.
Right.
And versus if you just looked at the spreadsheet, it appeared as if like the 500,000 was added in addition to the 258, but
Sure.
it wasn't. It was inclusive of the 258. And so
in addition to that, we discovered there's a separate thing with interpretation of the 1/3, 2/3, which is that you have a base amount you increase by 1/3, or is the base amount the 1/3 that you're increasing by? Does that make sense? So then I'm interpreting it different than what you are in the situation, because if you're saying the base is the 1/3, that costs triple of assuming the base is 1/3.
Yeah.
of that,
I
right?
think
So
the way
I think, yeah,
the
let's
way that
talk it
we're
out, but
interpreting it
there's-
is that the 1/3 is then
yes,
one iteration, and then you add another 1/3.
But you're saying the
iteration.
current, I think your interpretation is the current supplement they're receiving is the 1/3,
yes.
right? And so a lot of other people are interpreting it as the current base is the current base, so we're gonna take 1/3 of it and add that on. Because it hardly matters, because we're just negotiating it all at this point, so it doesn't matter what.
But our interpretation of it was what we are currently paying is the 1/3.
I understand that
Okay,
now, because there was
yes.
another person in our group who would interpret it that way,
Yes.
which most of us had not. So,
It as a standalone document, it needed explanation. It was difficult to interpret as a standalone.
Right. So yeah, let's figure it out. All right. So
Well, we
said-
talked about making our spreadsheets. I think it was made for that small group of people that had talked about it, but I think we could do a better job of making our spreadsheets stand alone. So
That's true of all of
that's a
us,
learning
always.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, we will aspire to that. Okay, for general compensation, we have a counter proposal for you. That dollar amount is of course higher than, hold on, how many years paid than what you had proposed. That's enough. But the main thing to talk about fundamentally is just two philosophical things we disagree with. So one is a percent increase. I think Rocky doesn't like that, right? And we really want across the board percent increase. I think we're actually not philosophically apart on that because I generally agree that you don't want an across the board percent increase in that it gives less to people at the base, right? That's always the case. In the past, I've negotiated for a unit of 3,000 where the minimum pay, what does that mean? Where the minimum pay was 8,800.
Okay.
So I negotiated for a group of 3,000 where at least half of them made the minimum, which was 8,800. And then some people made like 30,000 a year. So there, if you do a percent raise, well, that's terrible. So we always said, well, you want the base, right? And you create, it could be a percent, but this has to go to the base. The reason it's not so much like that today is because it's been years of the base increasing. And so now I think it's okay to disproportionately give higher paid people more. And so that's one philosophical component of this. The other one is that our opinion at FBA is that the year you get to 47.5, you can enact a 75% rule. I'd like to know where your guidance came from. From a practicality standpoint, Lake County, which is bigger than y'all, they got to 47.5 this year and implemented the 75% rule. And so they have submitted it to the DOE. The DOE, as I understand, has approved no plans. So that's still correct. They haven't approved anything.
We got
And so the question is now, so Lake, they're bigger than you. They've TA'd it. They've all ratified it. The board and the union, they're going to implement it. They're going to start paying. So the DOE is going to reject that in a couple months, and then what? So this is why I'm kind of, so I think these two philosophical things.
we've talked about this issue and was clear before. We got our guidance directly from DOE, Susan Pridgeon, DOE. So I mean, they're the ones that are telling us that you cannot get to 40, you can't implement the 75% rule in the same year that you get to 47.5.
Is that in writing anywhere?
I'm in writing.
An email?
I don't know.
An email, yeah.
My understanding is that the communication took place between Susan Pridgeon and our chief financial officer, Kim Branch.
Right.
So was it in an email or was it on the phone? I don't know.
Right.
So, but that's
So-
definitely the guidance that we received.
It's a lot easier for me to back off the percent if I have a document from the person in DOE saying that's not going to fly.
Right, but
And the
also
absence of
the philosophical disagreement. I do think that, yes, there is a basic philosophical agreement and that our superintendent feels that it's more fair for people to get a specific amount of money increase versus a percentage, because the percentage unfairly gives more to the people that are more highly compensated and that we have. And I understand your argument as well.
No, but
right?
you just said before you guys talk is that the superintendent was trying to make sure that people that were veteran teachers were recognized.
Mhm.
And this recognizes those veteran teachers even more.
But nonetheless, you can't do a percentage using the 150% rule.
Right.
So I mean, that's
Using
the-
the 70, which
If
is
you're
why
using the
the
150% rule, we can't do it. And we are operating in good faith on the direction from the DOE. Our whole plan has to be approved by the
Yeah,
DOE.
I understand
And
that.
so when it gets submitted, so when Lake County submits it and they say, no, go back to the drawing board, they're gonna waste an awful lot of time.
Yeah, if that's the case, what I'm saying is with the letter from the DOE, I would probably stop pushing percent stuff. But in the past, everywhere, I always get word of mouth. I got this guidance, that guidance. I want it in writing.
Well,
That's how I
that's
feel.
because we can't force DOE to put it in writing.
You can email them and ask a question and get a response.
No, it's up to them if they choose to respond in writing or to give a phone call.
Sure. Okay. So,
And at the end of the day, I can tell you that having gone through probably, I would say the last 3 months, not a million, but quite a few different iterations of submitting our TISA plan and the various charter schools within the counties, TISA plans to DOE, and then coming back and them saying, you gotta change this, you gotta do this, this doesn't comply. I will say DOE is looking very closely at these submissions. And when they don't align with the guidance that they've given, they're rejecting them. And I would hate to get to an agreement with the LCTA that goes through ratification, that goes through the board approval, that then has to be turned on its head because it doesn't comply with the guidance that the DOE has provided.
Okay.
All right. So you want to walk through your,
Sure, so I mean, it's bringing the base to 47.5, and then everyone else gets a 4.5% across the board increase with a minimum of 2150. And so I've costed it out as the top is to raise the base, the middle is the 4.5% raise. And then these line items, you see the bold one, is the addition to get the 2150 per person. And then our ESE provider supplement total cost, which mine is doing 1/3 of the current supplement, adding it on is 160,000. And then we had a separate line item here, which we've struck and kept the dollar amount and just replaced it with 5% supplement increase. And that total by our calculation is 7.3 million. At the bottom, those little notes, you know, when you're cleaning up the files, it's just notes about that. So if people had contract salary less than the minimum, we raised that, remove the duplicates. And then remember our original file was 1,950 teachers from our public records request. So I added on 100 to get to the 2050. I assume those 100 are all going to be at the base. So I'm not using them in the, will they get the 2150? I think that's a reasonable assumption, but that's the proposal.
There's an issue also with Skyward, with people that retire and come back. They're listed as their full years of service. So I know there's folks on there that have retired that it shows their 40 years and but they retired, took a year off, came back at step 20. They're not at 46. So however we're costing that out, however it's represented, it's not
costed at
matching
20.
it.
They're costed at their, because some of them are not at 20, some of them are at 23 because they've been back for 3 years.
Right.
So they're costed at the amount that they're actually at in terms of their, it's not a step, but their level within the scale.
I'm just saying, you got different data in different spots, so I'm not sure.
What we're trying to do is recognize their actual years of experience, but that's not the years of experience that is used to develop their pay. So for instance, like last year when we had people that got differentiated bonus amounts based upon their years of service, those individuals would have gotten service credit for
The
plus 30,
plus, yeah.
even though they were only on, step 20.
20
Even,
steps.
we don't have 20s, we don't have steps, but yeah.
Based on the 20th
Based on the
year of
20th year of experience, right? So the problem that we have here with this, and we'll definitely go back and consider it, but I mean, the problem that we have right now is that it's not legal. That's the issue.
Sure.
It doesn't comply with the law. And so, and also, as we've indicated, this most recent iteration have come up and brought to the table an additional $500,000, 6.6 million, right? The $7.28 million is significantly higher than that.
It is.
So it's not something that we can agree to at this point in time. I think that we can definitely work through, and I think that if we solve for the percentage issue in compliance with 150% rule, I still think that we are going to have to be in that $6.6 million range in order to have an agreement moving forward.
Plus the percentages, even if we get past 150%, we'll still be at the 75% rule. And so the percentage, but the percentage still makes it more difficult than a dollar value.
In what way?
In ensuring, because the change to the base will be an exact dollar value. So making sure that there are no percentages that would.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So what I've done is just grandfathered or not, whoever makes the highest amount in LCS 4.5%, and this fits the 75% rule with the basis, so it should be okay. Yeah. But yeah, you're right about that. So I did look into it. Yeah, so I will try to get written guidance from DOE. How about that? Will I be
Well,
successful?
yeah,
Stay tuned.
the problem is that, we've got a ton of teachers out there that need to get paid, right? We're ready to pay them, and we feel like we put on the table a very fair offer, and your counter, is not in compliance with the law, and we can't accept it, right? So
Yeah.
we want to, the more, we were hoping to have an agreement tonight so that we could go ahead and distribute, right? And the more we continue to, belabor this point, the longer teachers in our district, members of the unions, non-members of the unions are waiting to receive this incremental increase of pay, right?
Right.
So that's our concern.
Sure.
We want to get the money in the hands of the teachers.
Yeah.
And we feel like this is a very fair offer. Both of these are very fair offers.
I understand. And to your point about complying with the law, is that with your interpretation, and you said you got guidance, is it in writing, right? I don't have that. Another district has found it to be within the law that is larger than you. So square those things, right? That's why it's like, all right, I hear what you're saying. We don't find this to be in conflict with the law. And that other county was able to get money in the teachers' pockets doing this. So I hear your concern, but that is not a full stop thing that we are presenting illegal things necessarily.
So did Lake County get in writing from DOE that they are allowed to do that?
Their district, no, because their
Okay.
district was happy to say with their interpretation of the law, their legal team said this is
Right.
fine, we can do this. And we can
Right.
put the money in the teachers' pockets today. using
So
this.
maybe they haven't experienced what we experienced last year, which was the DOE withholding funds until we were in compliance.
Yeah.
Right? So we didn't get a single red penny from DOE until the end of the year because we did not have our submission. Remember, we talked about that. We have to get our, it was just our teeth, right?
So, yeah.
They held it off.
Yeah.
And that's what I would expect is going to happen to Lake County in this circumstance. Because they have no reservations with holding the money back. And Lake County, to your point, they're a lot larger than we are.
Yeah.
Probably have deeper pockets than we do, so maybe they can withstand it. But we're not in a position to be able to do
I think their fund balance is lower on a percent basis.
that. On a percent basis,
Well, it does because you gotta make payroll and stuff on a percent basis, so.
total money.
We'll see. You
I
may have-
mean, I
have a
would say that
similar
if you were us and had a conversation, whether in writing or verbally with
Yeah.
DOE where they instructed you one way, I think it would be irresponsible of us to not take that interpretation and move
I
forward.
agree with you, and I would totally understand when the union person said, give it to me in writing, I'd be like, yeah, of course you want it in writing.
Well, I appreciate
Right,
that. And
So,
there are a lot of things we want in writing and we can't force another entity to do
sure,
what we want them to do. And I think we're saying that the risk is awfully large and it sounds like Lake is willing to take that risk,
So-
but that's a large risk.
Yeah, and does this leave us in just a standoff waiting
Right.
on what happens to Lake County? The reality of it is we may not know for months upon months upon months what happens in Lake County, and we don't want to be in a position again like we were last year where it's May and we're giving, the full year increase to the teachers. We
Love
want,
that $31.
oh, well, I know. It was definitely not what we anticipated, right? But
$31.
But no matter whether this year is definitely not $31, right? And the last thing we want to be doing is waiting until the end of the year on a significant amount of money that's not getting paid because we have a basic disagreement on something the DOE has told us.
Kim Banks.
Oh, Kim Banks is our
She is.
CFO.
Yeah, right.
She took him back.
And she's
Is
not,
she what? I'm sorry.
No, Kim Banks.
Right.
who's our CFO, right? So who's speaking to, the head of this area for DOE, a person who's very much in authority to speak on the matter, right? Is providing that guidance to us. But Kim Banks has got no reason at all to not follow the director. She's got no personal dog in the fight.
I was talking to another county doing interesting things with the money. And they got DOE approval. I just said that was illegal. You can't do that. And they were told by DOE, the goals to get to 47.5, focus on that. Okay. So a lot of counties are willing to put some skin in the game. It just seems like you were hurt by the governor too recently.
How many other counties are in the back door,
Yeah.
you know, in the backyard
Five-ish,
of
yeah.
DOE. I mean, we're here. You know, and so, and also have been, you know, have been punished for not following the rules, right? So that's not something that we're interested in doing. What we're interested in doing is, you know, providing an increase that we know we can provide, and that we know we can pay, and do it now.
Well, and not just for our own interest, but how would that be if we were to make payments and then have to somehow rescind or
Yeah.
or discontinue the compensation package? I mean,
Right.
that would be very difficult, especially if we signed a contract for it. So, you know, I think it benefits us all to
Like the
be in a
DOE would-
sustainable financial position.
Sure, I would say the DOE would have a hard time pulling it at that point, making it to the 47.5, implemented, agreed on. Could interpret the law differently, but, you know, and other districts agree with me, it's the thing, and they're pushing forward on it, so it's all different, you know.
But they didn't go to DOE, right? Initially. to
Some-
get guidance.
I don't know, the one I just referenced did call DOE, when I was like, you can't do this, it's illegal in 2 separate ways, DOE said, look, it gets 47.5, okay? That was not this percent getting 47.5 the same year, it was a different
Can
thing,
you
but-
provide that to us in writing, where the DO said just give the 47.5?
Yeah, maybe. I have to see if it was forwarded to me or not, or if it was typed by someone else. But yeah, I'll try to get all kinds of things in writing. after
Yeah,
today, don't worry.
if you have that in writing from DOE, we would love to see it.
Great.
I mean, you know, I think that we continue to have the same goals, you know, of getting the money in the hands of the teachers. I don't know how we get past this part.
I know, but part of what was discussed was the money is the money and how you spend it's how you spend it. And when we do a percentage that fits within what, then it's, the superintendent doesn't want that. So,
No.
but no, his preference is a flat amount for everybody, not a percentage.
So
Well,
let me
there's two
ask,
different
if there was
things.
a
I'm just
legal way,
legally-
if there was a legal way to do a percent increase across the board, would you guys be open to doing that? Would you do that?
We would be open to discussing it. Yes, we're
So-
not closed.
Yeah, we're
Right.
not close.
So that could be implemented across the board rates if it were legal.
If it-
on a percentage.
What we've
And
said
fit
all
within
along
our financial.
is
Yeah,
that
okay, so
overall
6.6 million percent raise. That's
Legal.
fine, if it's legal.
If it's
Yeah,
legal,
yeah.
Let's not use legal and illegal.
Yeah.
Let's use abides by the law.
all right. Well, that's been
I didn't
that's
say
been the
anything was illegal, I
context
just kept
all
saying
along.
illegal.
I know we
But
use
yes.
terms illegal and all that.
Okay.
And that's been our
Allegedly
context all
legal.
along. We said, bring
How about-
us your proposal.
If I propose.
And the only
yeah.
confines that we have is that it abides by the law. That, you know, they've set parameters, 150% rule primarily, right? And we said that those things have to comply. Also, we have also said that there's no, you know, looking for deliberate loopholes where we know that they're closing those loopholes, right? So,
The numbers that were used or whatever spreadsheet Excel to create these two proposals, can we have access to that? Because you guys have gotten down to between like $834 and $920, very specific amounts between the differences of these two. And just so that we're all speaking the same language with the same numbers, to have access to that so that we can manipulate it.
so, and that's just an estimate. So I mean, it's based on the 2,051 employees that we had, you know, and basically when we got to the amount that it took to get to 47.5, you know, we built it on a couple different iterations, right? And they landed about $50,000 apart. Well, I just closed that gap, you know, in terms of the top number.
I'm just
matching
saying
the
it's
bottom
helpful.
number. So
rather
I'll
than
be
trying to
happy to
figure out the
provide
Excel sheet.
any of the numbers that you like, right? But they're all just estimates because the rosters change. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Rosters change.
So is it possible then we get that, then we can have the conversation about the supplement stuff or whatever the additional pieces of the small work group, just to at least make sure we're talking the same language?
Well, it sounds like we had gotten to the,
You-
I mean,
you
we
I
can
follow-
think
talk
we
in more
understand the
detail,
root
but I
of the
think-
difference.
okay.
Send me the cleanup spreadsheet. that you
Okay.
produced, right? Yeah.
And would like to also have the information on the supplement part so that we understand the 9,600 or versus the 2,200 and what that is. Because I know that Ricky Bell kept the Excel sheet of everyone's whose supplements came in, and we have past years of that. So I'm sure that this documents is doing a very similar thing by school site, who has what supplements with what amounts. And that'll help us determine based off of the names that are in there, who's part of the bargaining, who's not, and all that other kind of stuff.
So get with me after this about what exactly you're requesting so that we're 100% on what you're asking for. And we'll get you anything that you're looking for in terms of information. We're totally willing to share that. But, I think that it's disappointing that we're walking out of here, that we'll be walking out of here tonight, not being able to agree, at least on the format of how we approach this, right? It's been made clear to us by DOE that we cannot use the 75% rule in the same year that we get to 47.
Why is this random question? There's a guidance document for all of this that has so many questions answered. Have they not put this in any guidance doc? Why would they not put this in a guidance document? It's becoming a very common question. It seems very strange to me.
You know the answer to the question.
Politics?
No, you know the answer that they haven't provided that they have not provided the guidance in writing. So I mean,
They provide a lot of.
I don't know why.
specific
I don't know
guidance
why
about
they
a lot of
haven't,
other
but you know
stuff,
that
but
they
not-
haven't. So
All right, so they provided a lot of really specific guidance about a lot of this stuff, but not this, which is why to me, it's like, yeah, get to the 47.5 and why it seems like other districts are operating that way. But
yeah, all we're operating it on is the information that we have.
yeah, but you got
And
it.
that,
And we cannot speak on their behalf.
and once again, when I came to this meeting, Rocky was very optimistic that we might be able to get a deal done because he cares about the teachers in this district and he wants to put money in their pocket. Right. And, I'm sort of disappointed with where we are right now because, there's really not even a bridge to get that we can use to gap this or a bridge that we can use to approach this because it's using the percentage.
So if we are unable to get anything in writing from DOE, we'll be in our interpretation based on what we've heard from them. How do we move beyond this? Because that is something outside of our control. I'm just saying in the event that we are unable to.
So I think the percentage was selected because there was a lack of kind of willingness to address what would be like the leapfrogging issue, which would have been recognition of the recertification supplement, where it was, when people did that, we were to the district for a certain amount of time, and we'd go ahead and show that they were recognized for their loyalty to the district and all that other kind of stuff. But more importantly, that we wanted to retain that talent, and that was a way to get there, right? In the absence of that, the only way to differentiate those percentage,
Right.
because the goal, I understand the superintendent wants everyone to feel like everyone got a prize, the same prize. Got it. The problem is some of those people can't retire with their prize because they're not getting to the level that other people retired at 5 years ago. So that is why we want to make sure that we're starting to address those types of things as well.
And I appreciate, I understand the reasoning from the percentage, but what I'm saying is, how do we move past the interpretation of the 150% rule? Because that I think is kind of a big glaring issue that is going to hamper us coming to a deal unless we come up with a way to move past it.
And
I think we could talk through the percentage versus the standard amount, because that, and I do want to clarify that, that's not just about teachers. Rocky has that perspective for all employees. So we've all had conversations with him in all of our units about that. So it's not just focused on teachers, but again, I think that we're willing to work. It's just, how do we, it feels like we're at a bit of a stalemate with interpretation and we need to.
So if we know one thing, it's the state has this 150% rule. And the reason why we're not willing to consider the supplement, proposal that you put forward, because that's a deliberate circumvention of that 150% rule. And we're not willing to break the laws that relates to that 150% rule.
Where's the direct?
So when you talk about when you give a supplement for longevity, they specifically address that.
Right.
They said that we could not do it. And so when you say you won't consider that, that's because it breaks 150% rule. What we're looking to do And, you know, the percentage, I agree. It is a fair approach, but it isn't in compliance with the 150% rule. So, and when we get to the 75% rule, we definitely have a commitment to try and address leapfrogging to the extent that we can within the confines. We're hoping that 75% rule will become the 50% or the 25% rule, so we can address leapfrogging, right? But we won't know until the legislature sets the confines that we work with, right? So right now it's the 150% rule, and we can't get to an agreement where we use percentages because of the 150% rule. And we really can't proceed with negotiations if you guys are stuck on percentages. So for the time being, it's like, okay, if we stay where we are, we're just gonna be at an impasse, and no one gets paid. And that's not, to be clear, that's not what we want. Yeah, so.
And I think your concerns about experienced teachers are valid. It's just, again, the legislature has created this focus on the base that limits our ability to address some of those issues.
And when our side reaches out and we get something in writing that states different than what you've heard verbally, and we bring that to the table the next time around, are we willing to then back off the 150% rule and go to the things that we've offered because we have it in writing from somebody at the DOE that states that you can do this?
We'd be open to receiving anything that you have in writing, from DOE, any
Okay.
guidance that you
I'm
get.
just asking.
Official
Yeah.
guidance from someone in
Yeah,
the
not gonna make up
appropriate
something.
authority
So-
to take a
so-
position. No, I'm saying like someone's text message, you know what I
I'm not
mean?
saying
Like,
text message, but
Right.
I mean, there's times I call the DOE about my certification, for example, right, which is a legal proceeding, right? I have a legal proceeding that goes through, and I needed to get
Right.
certain things for business ed. So I wasn't a traditional teacher's path.
Right.
I had them email it to me in writing, and when it came down to recertifying, and the person that was looking at my certification, I sent that email of Johnny Smith said this, and this is why I'm submitting you these documents. I mean, I threw that person right under the bus. Because they sent it to me. I mean, if we get something from, you know, Susie at the office and she says, yeah, this is my interpretation of it, you're good to go.
I think Susie at the office, it would need to be someone a little more authoritative.
Yeah,
These Susie. she
Oh,
means
yeah,
Susie.
These
Bridget.
Susie, okay,
Yeah,
okay, these Susie.
They're
Yeah.
on a first name basis.
But I would
Yeah,
also
we hang out on
say,
weekends.
I would also say we want to plan to move forward if that's not possible, since
Yeah,
that is
I-
outside of our control, both of
Yes.
us.
No, I understand.
And
yes.
so what is our path
Right
forward?
now, there's no path forward, so we have to come up with something.
Right. And I think we both want a path forward, and
Yeah.
we would both prefer to interpret things in a way that is different from what we've heard. But again, we want to be in compliance, and we don't want to move forward with something that
150% raise for everybody, right? Is that what that rule means?
That's
We
pretty
should
high.
interpret it our own way then.
Don't break it.
there's limitations to how you can interpret
That would
it.
be, yeah. I might jump on board with that one too. So, you know.
Shoot them those numbers and see what happens.
So
Yeah.
I'm reading something from the DOE website that says if the 47.5 targeted minimum salary is achieved and the first 50% of the growth allocation has not been fully used, those funds can be combined with the remaining 50% of the growth allocation funds to provide salary increases according to the requirements for these funds.
That's referring to TISA.
Right.
The first part, it's not referring to the general fund additional.
Alternately, the funds may be used to further increase the minimum salary of the 47.5 associated with 50%
Right.
growth. Okay.
So I
That's
think,
TT son, yeah.
so I think where we're at is, you know, we'll go ahead and wrap up tonight.
Mhm.
And we, you know, hopefully we can get back together soon and we'll try and get some additional guidance. But I mean, you know, as it stands right now, we're in a place where we've got no way forward.
To fit into the world that you guys are kind of locked into. Just want to offer up something here and see what your thoughts are. So if you take the 3362, right?
He's on option one.
Option one. So if you take the 3362 and you multiply that blank by the 0.75 to the 150 rule, right? You get like $2,500, right? So $2,500, is that, am I missing something there? Is that right? So for 150.
So yeah, let me tell you. Okay, so the way you have to break this down, and we had it out there, so it'd be a little bit. So it's very complicated. All right, so let me find my paper.
It's math.
So it's math, yes. So the 150% rule does not apply to TISA. So what we did was the TISA is broken down, it's 50-50, it's based, so it's 50-50 for the money. But the problem is there's more people in the second half of the 50% than in the first half of the 50%. So the first half of the 50% is people at the base, second half of people that are not at the base. So there's like twice as many people in the second half of the money, right? So you apply that, and then that's when this 150% rule comes in. So it's only money that is given to us to you out of general fund that the 150% rule
I gotta
applies
tell
to.
you, DOE put out guidance a couple weeks ago that said absolutely the TSIA money has 150% rule applied to it. Because other districts were like, would you agree with this rule? I'm dead serious.
I've not seen that, but
Call
so
Leonard and ask him,
it's
'cause he's one of
the
people that
difference. The
gave it.
difference in
So
the
it's
difference in
like-
the money is not all that significant.
And for you all, I don't think that matters looking at this.
Yeah,
It's
the money,
fair.
the difference.
It
in money
matters
is
in other districts where it's flipped and there's only 30 veteran teachers and 70 of the other, and now it's 150% to the veterans, and the DOE has said, figure it out.
Well,
So,
there's not, so we looked at it from the perspective of the most cautious approach. We hadn't received that guidance, but there's, I can tell you there's not a whole lot of difference between the actual numbers when you do it 150% based on the whole or 150% based on just the
Well, it is
general fund.
because if you do 2,074, right, and you multiply it by 1.5, then you're ending up with, I mean,
I'm not saying there's not a difference.
$3,115, so it's less than what the total increase to the salary basis that you have up there. So I guess my point is,
I'll admit, there's definitely a difference, and we're
there's some
happy to look
rules
at
that
that.
are being applied that already have guidance, and then rules that we're trying to do that we would like. There's just too many interpretations that are going on that aren't on the same page, which hinders the ability. Because based off of what Chris just said, you're going to get denied anyway if you present option one.
Provide the guidance. If you provide the
yeah,
guidance,
I'll
I'm
text
happy
it
to
you right
rework it.
now.
But like I said, we know that we're under a microscope as it relates to DOE. And that was the interpretation that we used. It can't, if I've got a clear indication that they're going to allow you to look at it that way, then I'm happy to recalculate. It's not going to be significantly different, but it will be different.
And I don't
Are you-
think that's the biggest issue that we have between
Yeah,
us.
sure. I'm just pointing out that additional
Yes.
guidance, if you're
Yes.
trying to look at the document, it's question 29 on their
Okay.
most recent guidance. Which is directly asked the question we're talking about.
Good look at that. I've adjusted this number, to try and, make sure that it's trued up a million times, so I can do it again if necessary.
I think what you're saying is that it's more than 150% at the base,
Yeah, the way that it's, if that rule is.
but the rule is a minimum of 150%. They can put 300% to the base. We can
Why
pull
would
it back and
that's my
say,
point,
don't do
why would
that.
we
Yeah.
maximize on the base? Why would we not distribute that to the people that are
We're-
above it? if
We're
we're-
trying to distribute as much as we can to the people that are above the base. That, just so you know, that's our philosophy. So any opportunity that we feel like we can do that, we're going to do that.
Well, we also want to get as close to 47.5 as we can. It benefits us all. That's what the legislature wants us to go to. And we would like to get there quickly. But again, not at the expense of others. So we were trying to find a good balance of how we impacted the base, but also maximized.
Do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay. In an effort to try to move forward
Mhm.
on the board you're playing with. So on the base salary, to keep it within the 150 rule, I wouldn't get you to 47.5, but and it's not in 6.6, so I'm just gonna tell you that right now, so. But if we were able to do, because our goal was to get no less than 2,400 for our folks, which would be a 3,600 for the base. And then instead of the raise of the supplement of 10%, just do the first 1/3, which is the 450,000 for our ESC providers. So 3,600 for the base, 2,400 for everybody else, 450,000 for the 1/3 implementation.
And what are you saying this costs?
Well, once I get your spreadsheet, I'll let you know, but I'm just going.
I'll cost, how about this? I'll cost it and we'll look at it, but I mean,
Well, it's above the 6.
it's above the 6.6. So I mean, yeah, we're not in a position to be able to accept that, but we'll cost it. And continue to have discussions.
I mean, we're cutting AC all over the place.
I
We
know,
still gotta pay the
you're saving money that way.
80 degrees
In all
3
the
days in a
schools.
row.
I understand. So,
It's gonna be labor.
so just go back. Yeah, remember when we started this, we were 6.1. We've gone to the well and we found a way to get it to the 47.5. I can tell you that the board has already, we priced out getting to 2,200
What is
and
the,
they denied that. They said we just can't afford it. So I mean, that's just where we are.
so the base salary, what was the total cost of the $3,362 to the base increase? You get 47 over. Well, it tells you what the increase is, but. it
You
doesn't
want to
tell
know the
total
cost of the
Well,
bullet.
the
total cost of the
incremental
first bullet.
piece, I don't know. I'd have to, so I have the whole, the total cost is $6.6 million, but I don't have the cost of just the initial portion of it.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to understand. I think that's in the Excel, so we'll figure
But
that out.
but going back to what I said, when we were costing this, we knew that you were looking for $2,400, right? We tried to get as close to that number as we possibly could. And, where we landed was on that 21,125, sorry, 21,25 number. Because if you went up over 2,200, it was significantly more than we had to spend. Okay, so 24 is, I know that's out of the ballpark. I know that's out of the ballpark. We've taken that before the board, and it was not something that was supported. I mean, we're operating within $6.6 million. Give or take a little bit. Not a lot.
Do we have another
So that's
session?
a very fair offer.
I would also say in all other aspects, everything is more expensive this year than it has ever been. And I think we can all say that from our personal lives, but from a school board perspective, even when we're identifying savings, it's more like cost avoidance because it's still an increase, but it's maybe not as big of an increase as it could have been
And,
when we're negotiating.
and the other thing is we're sort of backing away from, any kind of hope that the numbers are going to be better.
Right.
That, we thought at first the numbers were going to be better, but as the numbers come in, the numbers are not better.
Are they as expected?
They're less than what we
Mhm.
expected.
I thought at school board meeting though, when we presented the signatures that Mr. Hannah said that there wasn't an issue with
We had, yeah,
FTE.
so we had an initial sort of look at what we thought it was going to be, right? And, I think that the issue there was Superintendent Hannah had just been confronted by the Moms for Liberty who said, don't send your kids, right? And so the bottom line is, he's obviously a very strong advocate for public education. And the numbers were looking good at that point in time. So he got up and he said, things are looking good for us.
Yeah, the estimates.
Yes. At this point in time, after another month has passed, what we're seeing is the numbers don't look as good as what we thought they were going to be to begin with. And that was a concern I had coming into this, is because there's not been a whole lot of discussion about how the numbers look. But the numbers don't look significantly better. And in fact, are sort of right in line with what we thought they were going to be and a little less. right? So, you know, in terms of optimism for the future and additional money down the line, we don't know yet. But it also tells us that we really don't have much more than the 6.6 to offer.
Do you know roughly what your charter weights are right now? Like a percent of your FTE has gone there? Like in your
I don't
TISA
have that number off
spreadsheet,
the top of my head.
roughly, I mean, is it 5%, 25%?
The charter way.
So like,
Good.
yeah, like you get TSIA money and you remove
Right.
part of that based on your UFT,
Right.
so it's a charter
Right.
weight.
That goes straight to,
The charters.
Yeah,
So that's what I'm asking.
So
What is that
I don't-
weight? Is it half? Because that also reflects other things in the district.
Right,
So that's why
no,
I'm just to
I mean,
get a
it's not
kind of
half, but,
measure of the weather here. Yeah.
right,
if I had Naomi here tonight, then she could tell
I
us.
don't know. Yeah,
Just to let you know off rough estimates based off the amount differences and the numbers that Chris used and the 450, it's a $1 million increase based off of what those numbers
So
are.
7.6.
That's what, I'm just saying, rough estimate right now, based off of those numbers.
That's not surprising because when I costed out the 2,200, it was in the 7 million range. So it's a significant amount more. And, you know, it is. When you talk about
$400,000 is.
$400,000 is a
close.
significant amount more.
Well, yes, it is, but when distributed among everybody and what a budget for a district is built off of, it's not like breaking back when you got 5 million in emergency fund and you got, you know, policies that keep 1 month in reserve. There's monies that are available. We're not asking necessarily to use some of those monies. We're saying we believe, based off of the analysis of the budget, that it's achievable, but you guys think otherwise. So let's focus on getting the work groups together, not a work group, but if we can concentrate on getting 2 days, get some contract language, because really, at the end of the day, the money is something people want, but they also want air conditioning, they want student discipline stuff dealt with, they want protected planning time. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that need to be addressed that are of importance to them. And the sooner that we kind of start addressing those things, I think the sooner we can get to an agreement on the money part as well.
We are very much in support of having discussions around fixing those issues. 100%.
We're not interested in discussions that are just discussions. We would like to move to contract language and things. I know the policy is also one things that were mentioned,
right.
but the purpose of this is bargaining, which is contract. And so there could be policy things that you also implement, but what the bargaining unit is looking for is actual language.
Understood, but we hope that you're open to us finding ways, if we don't feel that it's something that we could or should include in a contract, that we could still work together on ways to address those through documented enforceable changes, like changes to a policy that may not be in the contract, but we're still addressing your concerns and making the working environment better. And I'm not saying in every regard, but we're hopeful that we're open to coming up with collaborative ways of solving problems that don't always end up in the contract.
And keep in mind,
Can you
the
explain to me
contract
just as-
language that we currently have is the result of 60 years worth of bargaining. It's all been bargaining. So
Yeah.
it's not like we're starting from nothing. We've been collectively bargaining in this district for as long as I can remember. And so where we stand currently, while I understand it needs some work, right? It's not a unilaterally imposed place. It is a place that we've gotten to together.
I don't think that it's unilaterally imposed. It's that the discipline is escalated well beyond what the contract even contained, even over 6 years of language. So that is just, the other side of the coin. It's not on you.
And
I'm
special
sorry,
needs have increased significantly over the last 40 years.
And with just thinking of 60 years to now, the awareness and training and research behind, ESE students, for example, that is very different now than it was 60 years ago. So the language, it
All I'm
changes.
getting at
So
is every single year, we have discussions around contract negotiations, right? And we talk about the language. And so what I'm saying is that the place that we're at with current contract language is a result of all of those years of us working together to come up with language. And so all I'm saying is that where we're at now is not, something that we came up on our own. We've worked together to get there. And, it's not going to be unilaterally imposed by us. And it's not going to be unilaterally imposed by you. So this is part of the process. The discussion is part of the process. And we agree with what we feel like is mutually beneficial. And we're willing to have those discussions and try and get to a place where we can develop language that is getting you guys with what you need, but is also tenable for us.
So we'd like to go ahead and set some dates,
Absolutely.
because it's getting kind of late. I know everyone in here needs to go to bed.
We got tomorrow. Well, I
Okay.
know we have tomorrow. We've got that on the books.
We do.
Tomorrow, 4:30.
We'd like to go ahead and set
We have
where we
bargaining
have
up there?
Caseload.
Work.
No, we're
Yes, they were.
Okay.
work towards actual specific dates that we have set, like maybe
Absolutely.
a solid day that we can actually go. Check.
I'm
No,
happy
like
to,
it. No,
I'm happy to, that would be a bargaining session.
yes.
So we're happy to set those dates. You can just give us the dates. We'll plan them in the near future.
Okay, and then with those dates, we'd also like, I know that we talked about, we'd like to have, well, we need our principals on board. So we definitely need you guys there because we need to play some language off. But we also need people like Focus, someone from Focus, someone from, this Kathy Shields for ESE, Some of those- some of those important key players that you guys, it will limit how many times we have to come back.
Absolutely.
and forth.
So we've expanded our group of people that are going to be coming to the work sessions to include additional principals, additional district subject matter experts like Kathy Shields and other functional area leaders. And so, yeah, that's totally within our plan. I mean, what I'm saying to you is that we're taking this extremely seriously. And our goal is to get to language that will solve the problem. Is it the language that's been proposed? I don't know. And I think that we have some issues with the language that's been proposed, but I will say that we want to get to a point where we solve the problem. And so we're bringing all of the people that we can to bear so that we can work on solving the issue.
The question I was trying to ask earlier was, what is the benefit to you to having something be policy over contract language?
So something like student discipline that is more than just impactful to a teacher, it's impactful to students and our operations. It's in a policy now. So if we make changes that impact the students, the appropriate place for that would be policy that goes through the board instead of the employment contract. So that's just an example. Now, will that impact you? Sure. A lot of our policies do. And so that's why there's a process, but we don't want to start including things that could conflict with our policies, and then we would be in a real pickle just in how we operate, right? I mean, so it's just deciding what's the appropriate place for the language. And that's just one example, but
So in order for us to actually get to a point where we can kind of address this piece with the compensation, because a lot of people will say, things about protected planning that please, thank you, or substitutes being there rather than having to cover classes and losing time and all that other stuff. Like, that's where we need to make sure that language is shored up in the contract in order to move forward with financial stuff as well. We are as equally as committed as putting money in the pockets of people, but let's understand, as your costs go up, so do the costs of the people that are looking to get paid a significant salary after $31. So that's also part of the issue that we have as well, because their costs have gone up, as you said.
right.
So
We're committed to getting those people as much as we could possibly get them, to be clear.
Outside of compensation, what are your 3 priorities?
so we've shared
1, 2,
those
and
as
3.
student discipline,
What,
case
what
size,
is
class
number
load.
1, number 2, and number 3?
Student
What did you say, number
discipline,
one?
discipline.
Okay, well, I'm saying as LCTA as a
Yeah,
whole.
So in terms of that, it's going to be the student discipline, it's going to be class size, case load,
Cap size.
cap sizes, and it's going to be the protected planning piece for all folks, because, even people like, in terms of the guidance counselor and other folks, they don't have time, a lot of time, to do just basic things because they're constantly in meetings or managing different things. So those are the things that really are at the tip of the spear.
Okay, so number one was student discipline, number two was caseload / class size, and number three was protective planning.
And we're already gonna address whatever the camera piece is. And we've got options and ideas for the annual contract stuff for another time as well.
I mean, I think that's helpful for us in terms of focus, because there's a whole bunch of things, and if we're trying to get to a, you know,
An
knowing
agreement.
what's most important to you and focusing most of our energy on.
And we're gonna, I mean, obviously, we're going to continue to negotiate the language, right? But, you know, I mean, we would like to be able to get to a point with the compensation that we can get an agreement, right? So hopefully we'll get some information that will sort of help us with our little impasse situation right now, right? In the meantime, let's work on the language and.
Just a moment of
For
Yeah.
lowercase I.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not
Okay,
there.
Lowercase I, lowercase m.
Impasse.
Yeah.
Like
French bird.
speed bumps,
Yeah, it's a
A
little-
calming.
or maybe like a
Traffic
speed hump,
calming.
it's like
I
a
like
little
it.
bit
It's a
more.
traffic calming.
Oh, there you go. We're traffic calming.
So if we can get clarification that takes us off the percentage piece.
Yeah.
One way or
That's
the
helpful.
other,
Yeah,
that would be helpful.
yeah, I agree.
See, not in past just
So-
clarification.
I'm gonna seek that out.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We appreciate everyone being here tonight and hearing what's on the table.
Andy is on the table. That's all that got left behind.